Yeah.
Thanks. So as most of you are from non-technical background, I'll go with the basics today, like what we are going to do in this training sessions and what is the necessity of learning this language, what they do in the market. All these things I'll explain now. So first thing, we have different programming languages like Java is there, .NET is there, and Python is there, Android is there. So all these languages are used for a particular purpose. What is it? To develop software. So if you want to develop a software, then we use this particular programming languages. So all the programming languages are used to develop software. And this software is categorized into different types. One is what? System software, and the other is what? Application software. Two different types of softwares. So what do you mean by system software? We have operating system, which comes under system software. Like if you want to start a laptop, you need this OS. And this OS was coded using the programming languages. And what are the different OS we have in the market? We have Windows, we have Linux, we have Mac OS. So these are the different operating systems available. So what comes under application software? Again, the application software is divided into three types. Let's say one is system applications or desktop applications. Example, like this MS Paint, what we are using, the MS Office in the machine, what we install, or the Skype, what we use, or the VLC player, the Adobe Reader, games we play. All this comes under system applications, which can be controlled in this particular system itself. If I install MS Office in a system, I can control using that particular system itself. Okay. Next, we have web applications. So what are web applications? Like example, Facebook or Gmail, all this comes under web applications. So to develop these web applications also, we need to learn programming languages. And the next thing will be the mobile applications. Like we have Android phones, Android apps, and iOS apps is there. So this all comes under mobile applications. Okay. So to develop anything, any kind of software or application, we required a programming language. And it might be a system based application, it might be a website or web application, or it might be a mobile application. Okay. Next. So before programming language, what were the languages introduced in the market and why we are preferring programming language itself? If you think system is there, what does the system understand? System understands machine language. And here, machine language in the sense, it's ones and zeros. One is yes, zero means no. So if you want to develop a application using machine language, it takes millions of lines. And when we are using these millions of lines, somewhere if a one or zero is missing, to find that one or zero, it takes a lot of time and it's very, very complex. So to overcome that, what we are doing, they introduced another language known as assembly language. So there is this problem with machine language, very complex. So they introduced assembly language which works on instructions. Instructions in the sense, if I want to add two values, we use move a comma 10, means 10 value is moved into a. Move b comma 20, 20 value is moved into b. Add a comma b. So for adding two values, we are writing three instructions. Next, if I want to add again two values like a, b, again, if you want to add, again three instructions must be written. If I want to add again two values, again three instructions must be written. Means what? The length of the code is getting lengthy. So it is not good. We want less number of lines. So what is the problem with assembly language? That when we use these instructions to write the code, length of the code is increasing drastically, but we want less number of lines. Then they introduced this programming language where we use just c equals to a plus b, that's it. We don't use any other steps. We can change n number of values in a and b and we can write the code. So if you observe, among machine and assembly, programming is best because the number of lines are less and it is easy for us to understand as we are using the alphabets or the characters. Okay. So machine or the system understands only machine language. It can't understand any other language because 1 is yes and 0 is no for a machine. So in order to make it understand the assembly language and programming language, we also have again softwares. Softwares in the sense assembler. So what this assembler will do? This assembler converts the entire assembly language into machine language because the system does not understand assembly language. Next, again, we have compiler and interpreter. So what does this compiler and interpreter are doing? They convert the entire programming language into machine language because machine can't understand the programming language. Okay. Then what is the difference between a compiler and interpreter? If I have a compiler or an interpreter, suppose I have 5 lines of code. If I'm giving to a interpreter, it will execute step by step, one after the other instruction it will execute. If I give the same code to a compiler, it will execute all the lines at a time. So which is faster? Compiler. Okay. So mostly we prefer compiler for programming languages. So till now the discussion is about why programming language. The next part will be why Java itself, why not other languages. Okay. So any doubts till now?
No. No.
Yeah, great. Nidhi,
Yeah,
is it fine?
no, no, it's clear.
Right. So I'm continuing with the basics because just to have a clear picture what's happening. Okay, what's happening in the programming languages. Now, So we learned why programming language is required. Why? Because in order to develop software. And in among programming languages, what is the first programming language? Fortran. So what they introduced first? Fortran. In which year? 1954. Who introduced this? IBM. So IBM is the company which introduced Fortran language into the market. Fortran in the sense formula translation. And what we can do with Fortran? We can develop mathematical applications. But Fortran is limited to mathematical application itself. I cannot develop other languages, other applications. So what they introduced? They introduced Pascal, COBOL, ALGOL, BCPL, CPL. These are the different languages we had which develop a application. Means COBOL's develop application language or application, business application you can say. Okay. So what is happening here? Each language is developing one application. But which is better? One language developing all the applications or one language developing one application? Which is better?
One language developing all the application.
Right. So at that time, they introduced a language known as C language in the year 1972. Why? Because C is a structured language which can develop both system applications as well as uh, desktop applications. So system software and application software both can be developed using C language. But C is structured programming language and we can't develop web applications using C language. Then what was introduced? Java in the year 1992, which follows OOPS concepts. So what is the advantage of Java? Java can develop all the application softwares, system applications, web applications, and mobile applications. Okay. Next, apart from Java, we have PHP, which was introduced in the year 1996, which also follows OOPS. We have .NET, which was introduced in the year 2002, which also follows OOPS. Okay. So among these, the common part is what? OOPS. What do you mean by OOPS? OOPS is a standard. OOPS has some standards like object-oriented programming structure. It consists of some principles, like 6 principles it consists. Those 6 principles are followed by the language. Like what are the 6 principles? Class, object, encapsulation, inheritance, abstraction, polymorphism. So we'll see step by step what are those and how we implement them. But before that, today we'll just see an introduction of what is class and object. Okay. So among these, OOPS, Java follows all those 6 principles. PHP follows only 3. So you can say compared with PHP, Java is more secure and more standard because it follows all the 6 principles. .NET is also following all the 6 principles, but Java is open source from the start. From the start, .NET was paid source. Okay. Recently, .NET has released a particular version which is also being open source. But as Java is open source, what is open source? It is freely available in the market. As Java is free, it is being used frequently in the market by all the companies. That's the reason you can see there are a lot of jobs on Java compared with other technologies, as it's an open source and it is way more standard and highly secure. Okay. Next, I guess this thing is also clear. Any doubts, anyone?
No.
No.
Yeah, great. So if you want to start this oops, like if you want to learn any programming language, the basic thing will be oops. And in the oops, the two concepts what you need to understand is class and object. Okay. So I'll not directly jump into the definitions. Let's go theoretically, like what is class, what is object. Let's discuss casually. So usually object means what? Which exists physically. What you can say? Which exists physically. Like in your surroundings, you can see a mobile, a fan, a bottle, a pen. All these are objects which are visible to you. And what this object consists of? It has some properties. Like you can identify the bottle because of its shape, and it has some action. So every objects perform some action. Properties in the sense you can have some shape, color, height, weight, everything comes under the property. Action in the sense the object performs some action that comes under the action. So what is object which is visible to you? Where it has some property so that you can identify it and it performs some action. That is an object. Now, what is not an object? Which doesn't exist. So what is not an object? Which doesn't exist. Any example on which doesn't exist? Anyone? You know what is object? Like whatever is visible to you, it's an object. You can say directly the chair, table, all this comes under object. But I want which does not exist. What are the examples? Anyone? You can see that air doesn't exist.
Wind.
So you can see energy, force, dreams, these doesn't exist. So what I call it as clash. So simple thing, which exists is an object, which doesn't exist is in a clash. I'm just categorizing these two things. Now my question is, try to answer these questions, everyone. If I take an apple, is it a class or an object?
Object.
Object.
Others.
Object.
If I take a mango, is it a class or object?
It's object.
It's object.
If I take a fruit, it's a class and object.
Class.
Class. How can you say fruit class? If you see apple, apple exists physically and it has some color properties. Whereas coming to fruit, fruit doesn't exist. Like apple is a fruit and mango is a fruit. So apple and mango are the objects and fruit is a class. So class is a collection of objects. This is one definition you can say. If you see, have you seen a mango? Yes, mango can be of green color or yellow color. Have you seen an apple? Yes, it might be a red or a green apple. Have you seen a fruit? No, we haven't seen a fruit. We have seen an apple, which is a fruit. We have seen a mango, which is a fruit. Okay. So what is a class definition? A class is nothing but collection of objects. Just now we have seen like fruit is a class and apple and mango are the objects. And next, object, consists of properties and action. So what we can say, collection of properties and action. That is also a class definition. Okay. Next, let's say I have an animal. Animal is a class or object?
Class.
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 Correct. Tiger is a class or object?
Object.
Object.
Okay. And if I say rose, rose is a class or object?
Object.
It's object.
Flower?
Class.
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 Correct. Now the last thing, person.
Class.
And a person with the name Rahul.
Object.
Yes. So any person has some properties and he performs some action. Let's say I have Rahul. What are the properties of Rahul or a person? Age, height, weight, color, all this comes under the properties. What are the actions performed by Rahul? He can eat, he can walk, he can talk, he can read, he can sleep. All this comes under the actions. So till now what you have seen, just an example of a person and a Rahul and some properties in action. Now for the same thing, I'll create a class. So what is the class here? Person. And what are the person properties? Int age. So what is int? I'll explain again in the later sessions. Okay. It just means that we can store the values inside this, and that to be without point values. And float height. So what is height here? Height is nothing but a point value, like float. Float can store only point values, we can say. Okay. Two things, one without the point values, one with the point values. That is int and float. And what is eat? Eat is a action, or you can say it's a method. So how to write a method also we'll see in the later sessions. Just you need to understand that class is a collection of variables and methods or properties and action or collection of objects. This all comes under class itself. Collection of variables and methods. That is nothing but class. And what is Rahul here? Why we need a Rahul in the sense, for this class person, there is no memory allocated because class doesn't exist. Means inside a system or a laptop, if you want to install a software, I need a memory. If you want to play a game, while playing the game, you give a name for a character. While giving that name, that should be stored inside a system in a memory. So if you want to do anything inside a machine, you need memory. That is very important. And that memory itself is not allocated for a class. Why it has not been allocated? Because class doesn't exist. What exists? Object. Means if you want to have the memory for that class, so this is a memory for the person class, then what is that memory name? Rahul. So what is Rahul? Rahul is an object which exists. Means that Rahul contains the memory for age, height, eat, talk. All this comes under Rahul memory itself. What do you mean by that? If I want to take age equals to 22, it is wrong. Machine is not able to store that. Why you are not able to store it? Because the memory is allocated for the person with the name Rahul, and the memory of age is indicated using Rahul itself. Means if I say Rahul dot age, then it means what? That Rahul memory contains a location with the value age equals to 22. Understood? This is the most important thing here. So what is Rahul? Rahul is an object. And if I say Shiva dot age, then what will happen? 32. Some value we have stored. Means another memory got created with the name Shiva. And when I say Shiva dot age equals to 32, that age consists of 32. Okay. So what is the advantage? Why we need to do all these things? If you observe clearly, the age is declared only once, but you are able to access it twice. Why? Because we have two memories, Rahul memory and Shiva memory. Means class consists of variables and methods, and for the class there is no memory. Because if I want to access age, create a memory and access it. If I want to access age again, create another memory and access it. Means the variable is declared only once and we can access it n number of times based on n number of objects. That is the main important thing. And what do you mean by object? Object means memory. So both the things are same. If you want to allocate some memory, create an object. If you create an object, memory is allocated. That's the reason you can see in this OOPS, it's object oriented. What do you mean OOPS? Object oriented. So everything revolves around this objects, memory. If you have memory, use it. If you don't have memory, you can't use it. That's the main intention. This is the most important thing. Is it clear? Any doubts? Deepika, Lavanya, Nidhi, Priya, Priyanka. Just unmute if you have any doubts.
Clear, clear, sir.
No doubt. Clear.
It's clear. Yeah.
So next thing. So if you understand this class and object, if you're able to understand this person, variables and methods, you can learn easily the programming language. because daily in our programs we'll write a class, we'll write a variable, we'll write a method, we create object and we use it. So there might be different ways, but the meaning is same. Without the object, there won't be any program. So in a rare situation, if the object is not available, then what we have to do? That also we'll discuss in the later sessions. Okay. So this is the main thing for OOPS. OOPS consists of class and object. And what is the advantage? Why there is no memory for a class, and why we have to create an object is nothing but class variables and methods are declared once, and you can use them n number of times based on the n number of objects. Okay. Next thing, but what is the end result? What we do in the market? If you go to a job, what kind of jobs are available in the market? In the market, you have business applications. So 90% of the jobs are on this particular business applications. What do you mean by business applications? It's nothing but web applications, which comes under business applications. So there are two kinds of things. Again, if you go to a job, already the website or the web application is built. They want some changes, or they want to debug the issues, or you can start a project from the scratch. Okay. So mostly it will be websites or web application itself. And here, web applications in the sense like Facebook, the Gmail. If you want to start any business, first you need a website. Without the website, you can't promote yourself. And in the website also nowadays, like dynamic behavior is applied, like registration has been done, login, you can see your result in the websites, you can buy the products. Everything nowadays is done using web application itself. Okay. So everything is coming to your home just within the fingers. And that is possible because of these applications, web applications or Android applications. But any company, first it will start the web and then it will move on to the Android. But mostly everyone will have web application preferred. So how to develop a web application? What technologies are being used? What we'll learn in in this 2 months period or 2.5 months, what we are going to learn, how it will be useful for you in the market. So let's consider login, a Facebook login, Gmail login, any login has a common thing. A text box will be there, username text box, a password. Click on the login button. What happens? Once you click on the login button, it goes to the home page. You give some values like A, B, C, X, Y, Z. In Facebook, you give with the username and password. If it is correct, it will directly get redirected to the home page. How it is happening? Between we have a server and register, like you give the username, you give the password at the time of register, right? All these things are getting stored in a database. So what is a database in the sense? Storage. Whatever at the time of creation you give, that are getting stored in the database. The server again consists of two parts. A web server is there, and we have a server side tools. Okay, or you can say a container which has both web server and server side technologies, just a container. So we have web server and server side technologies. So before starting, you should have knowledge on developing a web application, that is HTML, hypertext markup language. By using this, you can create those text box, the button, all these things are possible using the HTML. Next, we have CSS, cascading style sheets. If you want to apply some styles on the web page, then we use this CSS. Next, we have JavaScript. Suppose I have given email ID, but I didn't mention the @gmail.com. Then what will happen? It will say, please enter valid email ID. If I don't give username and password and click on login, it will ask, please enter username and password. So that is possible by using this JavaScript. JavaScript means it checks the values are given properly or not. That is the client side validation. And in the present market, we have Angular or React. So we'll go through React because nowadays all the job openings are mostly on React itself. React as a front-end developer, and the backend will be, let's see, database. What is database? Storage purpose. And what databases we can see? We can learn Oracle, we can learn MySQL, we can learn PostgreSQL or MongoDB. All this comes under database and storage. Okay. So what happens is when you enter the username and password, it comes to the web server. See, if you go to a bank and you want to open an account, you directly won't visit the manager. If you see, separate departments, accountant department will be different, and the clerk department will be different, the manager department will be different. So what happens is, first, when you want the web page, you use this language, CSS, JavaScript. And when you want to store, you use this database technologies. Coming to web server, what does web server do in the sense? We have two types of request. One is static request, and the other thing is dynamic request. Static request in the sense, if you open any college website, university website, that is a static request. You're just asking a web page and the web server will directly retrieve it and give it. Dynamic request in the sense, like your result, you enter the hall ticket number. Based on the hall ticket number, the result will vary. For every hall ticket number, different results will come. So here, web server can handle static request itself. Means it cannot handle dynamic requests. Like taking the username and password, going to the database and redirecting to the home page. That cannot be done only using web server. What web server will do? Forward the request to server side technologies. So what are the server side technologies we have? We have servlets, and JSP first. But servlets and JSP are not being used in the market because we have an extension for them, that is Spring Framework or Spring Boot. So first you learn servlets and JSP, and later we'll work on Spring and Spring Boot. Okay, their functionality is same, taking the values, going to the database, checking and coming back, but in a different way, in a structured way we can do it. Now server-side technologies, what they do, they handle dynamic request. Means what? Web server handles static request. The front end, this you can say it as front end. Front end technology is used to create the web page.
Rohit, I have one question. So this web server is like front end, you are saying?
No, web server handles the request. It
Okay.
takes the values from the front end and gives it to the server side technology. That is done by the web server. And here, what server side technologies are doing, handling the dynamic request. It can't interact with the database. So to interact with the database, again, what we learn? We learn JDBC or Hibernate framework. So this Hibernate framework is being used. If you search in the jobs, you will see Spring Boot, Spring Framework, Hibernate. Okay. Or you can say JPA. Next. So server side technologies use this JDBC or Hibernate to interact with the database. And if the value exists, that is given in the form of objects to the framework. What they do, they have a web page, that web page is given to the web server. And again, the web server will give the response to the user. The home page is given directly to the user. So this is the internal things what we have to see. Okay. And along with it, you learn tools like we use Eclipse or IntelliJ for coding. We learn Maven tool. We need to learn the REST framework. REST, and the next thing will be Postman. When we see the REST framework, we'll see the Postman also. So all these things like GitHub for the version control. Companies, all the code is getting stored in the GitHubs. Okay, so we'll develop a project itself, like a small project which comes under a scenario of a doctor and a patient. Patient is trying to give a appointment request, doctor is accepting or rejecting, where we'll perform all the actions required in the industry. So to do this step by step, we'll learn the languages. So core Java will be the first, then the servlets and JSP, HTML, CSS, this MySQL commands, the Spring Framework, Spring Boot. So ultimately, all these things are used to develop an application. We integrate all these things and create a project. Okay.
So here, what is static request and dynamic? I'm confused a little bit.
You have opened your university website.
Yeah.
Every time the website will be same, or suppose consider Wikipedia. Hey, Sachin Tendulkar, every time the same page will come or different page will come?
Same page just coming.
static request. Already the page will be there. The web server will take and give it to the user. So the static request can be handled by web server. Like if I say facebook.com, the login page will be retrieved by the web server. But when I give the username and password, that should be checked with the database, whether the username password exists or not. That is done using the server-side technology, that is the dynamic request. So for every username and password, there will be a different profile page, different home page, right? Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear. So
Any
here,
other
like,
doubt? Yeah.
I mean, in website server-side technology, we have this servlet framework and what
Yes.
is then again here like Hibernate framework where it comes? I mean, uh,
So to interact with the database, these
mhm,
values are given to the server side, right?
mhm.
The server side, like servlets and JSP, they can retrieve the values. But if they want to send it to the database, then they have to use JDBC or
Okay,
Hibernate. Okay.
yeah, understand.
So we'll see all the language technologies and we'll write a program, then it will be clear step by step. The end result is a application. Like in the markets, this login registration, this will be common. So if you do one project, all the projects will be similar. So any doubts?
No, I'm good.
Yeah. So I'll be going in a basic structure, basic manner. So if you have any doubts, you all can freely ask because everyone is new to these languages. And if you want, you can personally ping me in Skype. If you have any doubts, we can connect through Skype and discuss your doubts. That is also fine with me. But you need to focus on programming, like daily programs will be given, daily assignments will be given. Those you need to complete. Okay.
Okay.
Sure, Rohit.
Yeah. Lavanya, you can stop recording.
Okay.